Hello, hello, hello. JD here with Best MMA Picks. We're getting ready. We're going live now to do our full card breakdown of UFC Fight Night 73, Teixeira versus St. Preux, UFC Nashville. I apologize if I have to keep the volume a little bit lower because my kids are asleep in the other room taking a nap. So I do not want them to wake up while I'm doing this broadcast. So bear with me if hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm pretty excited about this card. I think that there's a few good underdogs we could take a shot at. Really trying to get a little bit more methodical with our picks. Really instead of picking, for value, obviously picking winners. I do not like to bet anything over $1.50. With MMA, it gets too expensive, and you can waste your bankroll pretty quick that way. But you can also waste your bankroll picking a bunch of underdogs too. So we're going to really try to be selective with which underdogs we choose. Hopefully, underdogs that are on a streak or are headed, have some forward momentum while they're facing a favorite that's kind of going in the opposite direction. That's kind of what we're going to aim for. So I'm pretty excited about these picks. I hope that you are too. Once again, like I say, with a disclaimer, this is all just advice. Take it as you will. I'm not responsible for any kind of financial damages that are caused as a result of following and tailing my picks. They are all free. Bet at your own risk. But with that being said, we've done fairly well with the last couple cards. I believe that we're 7-1 with the last 8 main events, UFC main events, including underdog picks. So we know our stuff with MMA, but we've had a little bit of trouble with some of the prelims. So keep that in mind. I think we're going to do better today, though. I'm pretty positive today. So pay attention to these picks. Do your own research, and hopefully you can benefit from some of this information. So let's start it off here with our first. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet because I want to be able to give you guys time to get your bets and your DraftKings picks in. We're going to start this off with our first fight on the card. It's Scott Holtzman versus Anthony Christodoulou. I don't even know that I pronounced that correctly. A little bit of a tongue twister there. Scott Holtzman's coming in as a massive favorite at negative 1010 versus Anthony Christodoulou coming in at positive 699. The over-under is set at 1.5 rounds, with the over being favored at negative 159 and the under at positive 135. I don't know much about both of these fighters except for the fact, I didn't have time to view footage or anything like that on these guys, but I'm not going to even be really touching the first fight. From what I understand from most of the other sharp handicappers out there, it's pretty much a landslide, unanimous opinion as far as Holtzman being able to take this as an easy win, with Christodoulou being not really belonging in the UFC. I would probably not even touch the underdog, and I probably would not even touch the favorite here. If you're going to play anything, play the over-under. More than likely, I could see this one going pretty quick with a quick finish, possibly the first round. My lean would be to bet the under. I don't like betting under 1.5 rounds typically, but I could see that happening here just because of the disparity between both fighters. So my lead would be the under 1.5 rounds with this fight. We're not going to get into too much details there, but it should be a pretty easy victory for Holtzman. Next fight, I did look at quite a bit of footage on both of these guys. We've got Roman Salazar and Marlon Vera. Vera's coming in as the favorite at negative 125, and Salazar is a slight underdog at positive 113. I was able to do a little bit of research on both these guys. I've seen them both fight their last 2 fights. We didn't get a whole lot of footage on Salazar just because of the fact that both of his last 2 fights ended rather quickly. One of them being a first round finish where he lost and was subbed by Mitch Gagnon, in the first round. And then the second fight being against Kid Yamamoto, which was the most recent. I believe it was an eye poke. Got stopped in the second round and they were unable to continue, so it became a no contest. From what I've observed just from the limited footage that I saw of Salazar, he seems to be a very methodical fighter, likes to strike, likes to keep his distance. Very aggressive fighters. They've tend to beat him, with Mitch Gagnon being a perfect example. Just putting the pressure on him, get into the ground and locking in a sub quickly. He doesn't seem to like to commit early. He's a slow starter. So keep that in mind. He does have 6 finishes in the first round, though. He has 6 finishes, 5 of which have been in the first round. I think that those were against lesser non-UFC, fighters. So keep that in mind as well. Vera, he has 4 first round finishes. He's a TUF Latin America Team Verdun fighter. He also, one thing to note about him is he fights out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. So he is fighting at a higher elevation, which is something to note. He does tend to kind of push the pace. He seems to have very good endurance, likes to take the fight to the ground as soon as possible. He seems to be pretty slippery with his transitions, which is kind of good. He has a really strong sub game. He is a little bit vulnerable to top control with stronger wrestlers, and very experienced ground fighters. He likes to clinch up, kind of likes to do a little bit of dirty boxing, really likes to kind of grind guys out. I really like this guy. I like that he's training at higher elevation. I like that he's a pressure fighter, which Salazar seems to kind of fold under pressure. I think that he will probably try to grind one out with Salazar. And Salazar seems like the kind of guy who is vulnerable to submissions. So, this is a pretty good matchup, I think, for Vera. Unless something weird happens where he gets, tagged early, I don't see Salazar even coming close to beating Vera. I think Vera is going to kind of make a run here, hopefully get another win or two, move his way up in the ranks for his division. The over/under on this fight set at 2.5 rounds, with the over being favored at -134, the under being +115. My lean is to go with Marlon Vera to win by submission, probably in the second round, but we could see a first round stoppage, and also the under at 115. So those are my leans for that fight. Moving on, we've got a newcomer, Jonathan Wilson, and a UFC veteran, or I guess you could say sort of a veteran, Chris Dempsey. Jonathan Wilson is a knockout artist who's kind of come on the scene recently. I believe he was a Gladiator Challenge fighter before. He's had quite a few KOs in the ring. I believe it was 6-0 professional record. He's finished 4 guys in the first round, and he's had 3 KOs in less than 2 minutes. So he's got some heavy hands. He's got power behind those hands. He seems to be a well-rounded fighter with, some wrestling experience. Has a good sprawl, so he does have some takedown defense there. He has been tagged a few times by guys that were pretty good strikers. During his amateur career, he was very raw as far as his feints and leaving himself open to counter punches. He seems to have kind of tightened that up a little bit. I did not get to view any footage of his last 2 fights because there's not really a whole lot out there. But from what I've seen out there as far as information, he looks like he does have some good striking. He's got good power, and he looks like kind of a prime prospect, to kind of make a run in the UFC. Chris Dempsey's really kind of struggled in the UFC lately. Um, he dropped from light heavyweight to middleweight now. He's a two-time Division II All-American wrestler, so he's got a lot of wrestling experience, really good with takedowns. He's not really good as far as mixing his strikes with his takedowns to get people to the ground. So well-rounded mixed martial artist is going to have an easier time stuffing those takedowns and telegraphing his strikes, because he kind of likes to wind up a lot with his striking. And he just didn't look very good his last fight. When he fought Latifi, he got knocked out. So he does have kind of a glass jaw and a weak chin, it seems like, or it's questionable. He may have learned from that experience and maybe has tightened up some of his striking. It's hard to tell where he's at. But from what I've seen, he's still pretty raw with his striking. The takedown game, that may be the difference maker here with these two guys. It's hard to say. I think Wilson will be prepared for this. This is going to be kind of a fight for him that it's going to be a make or break situation. He may not get another fight in the UFC if he loses here. So, he's going to be probably a little bit more serious than Dempsey, I would imagine. And I could see a quick finish of Dempsey just because of that weak chin and his inability to mix his striking with his takedowns. I do believe Dempsey may be the stronger fighter here. He may have that advantage dropping from light heavyweight, and we'll see how that fares for him with his cardio. But my lean would be to take Jonathan Wilson at -125 and the under 1.5 at -153. It seems like a lot of people are favoring Wilson to knock him out the first round. I would probably have to agree with that. I'd probably stay away from a play on the over-under, and I'd probably just play Wilson himself. So moving on from there, we've got on the last fight pass card fight, we've got Frankie Saenz as a slight underdog at +108, and Sirwan Kakai at -119. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds, the over being a favorite at -260, which is massively a favorite, and the under being +215. I mean, the odds here reflect that over-under, though. Both these guys are grinders. Sirwan Kakai is a better striker than Frankie Saenz. Saenz is a Division I wrestler. He's out of Arizona State. His last fight, he looked really good against Yuri Alcantara. There's a correct pronunciation there. He took him down with ease. I mean, he had no problems taking down Yuri, and Yuri's a little bit harder guy to take down. So we gotta pay attention to that. He seems like he really mixes in his striking with his takedowns. His striking's not the best, but he does manage to slip in a lot of elbows, some dirty boxing in the clinch. And he also, he can kind of time some of those shots, and he slips them in, especially against a guy like Alcantara, who's a very good striker, a very good Muay Thai practitioner. He's got a lot of experience against really good opponents like Uriah Faber. Sirwan Kakai, he's fought some guys that do have experience, and he definitely looks like he's in his prime as well. So this one's a tough one. I think the odds definitely reflect, the matchup here between the two guys. And if I were to give one guy an advantage on the feet, it would be Kakai. He's got really good counter striking. He really picks his shots, doesn't leave a whole lot of openings. It doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes there. I believe he's a tri-star mixed martial artist, which, for us, the hobby, being your coach, of course, you're going to, have very good striking. So that's something to kind of take a note of. It's going to be a pretty close fight, I think. But I think the difference maker here between these two guys is going to be the wrestling of Frankie Saenz. I don't think he's going to do very well on the feet. And when he figures out that, I'm probably not going to win this fight on the feet, he's going to take it to the ground. And I think he's going to be able to dictate, the fight from there. And he's going to probably have top control 80% of the time. And so as much of an ugly striker, I guess he's not really an ugly striker, but as raw of a striker as Frankie Saenz is as a wrestler, I think he's going to control this fight. and he's going to get a decision victory, whether it be a split decision or unanimous. More than likely split decision. It's going to be close, but I could see it also being a unanimous decision. Definitely the over-under reflects that. And so my leans are going to be to go with Frankie Sands by split decision, and the over 2.5 rounds to go the distance. Moving on, we've got Dustin Ortiz and Willie Gates. Both of these guys, good fighters. Willie Gates likes to strike, good striker. Dustin Ortiz has a wrestling background. Dustin Ortiz is coming in as a 4-1 favorite at -420. Willie Gates being the underdog at +360. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds, with the over being favored at -153 and the under at +130. I really like Dustin Ortiz and where he's going with his game. I think he's going to probably get the victory here more than likely. Willie Gates is definitely game for a KO, but Dustin Ortiz is a very quick fighter. He's shown how fast he is. He was an underdog to Justin Scoggins, who was also a very good fighter, very quick fighter. And, you know, Dustin Ortiz, he's one of those kind of guys who can really, he's an underrated fighter. He's going to probably make a run at a title shot at some point. And so my leans to go with Dustin Ortiz, pretty easy pick here. I recommend parlaying it, not playing it straight. You could parlay him with another favorite, or, you know, use him to kind of to get rid of some of the juice on a favorite that's, you know, like a -150 favorite. I think that this one will more than likely go over. But there is a little value, I think, with the under. I'm going to lean over, though, at -153 for this fight. Moving on, we've got Chris Camozzi and Tom Watson. This one, you know, no disrespect to either of these guys, but they both struggled recently in the UFC. I think they're both on the verge of being cut by the UFC. Chris Camozzi is a striker/wrestler, pretty well-rounded MMA practitioner. Tom Watson's more of a striker from the UK. Chris Camozzi's coming in as a favorite at -121, and Tom Watson at +110. The over-under set at 2.5 rounds, with the over being favored at -240 and the under at +200. There may be some value there with that under. I think both these guys, it's going to kind of be the battle of the bums here. It's kind of like when you handicap this fight, you're looking for the guy who's going to make more mistakes, and who's going to be able to get who to the ground. I think Camozzi probably has a little bit better wrestling than Tom Watson, and Tom Watson's been particularly vulnerable to wrestlers. But Camozzi is not the best fighter. He's really struggled. I think he's lost his last 4 fights in a row. I'm surprised that he hasn't been cut yet by the UFC. He's still around. But a lot of his fights have been against much more talented opponents than Tom Watson. He's fought Ronaldo Jacare Souza twice now, being his last fight as a loss to Jacare. You know, he didn't look horrible considering it was Jacare, but, you know, obviously he wasn't going to win that one. So you got to give the experience advantage to Camozzi. Watson has fought a few guys, but nothing compared to the caliber of opponents that Camozzi has fought. And it's hard to say, you know, about the chin of Camozzi. I think he has been knocked out once or twice. I have to confirm that here. Let's take a look here. The last couple of fights. He's been subbed, mostly decision losses the last couple of fights. He lost to Rafael Natal and Bruno Santos before the last fight with Jacare. He also lost a unanimous decision to Lorenz Larkin. So he's fought some pretty damn good guys. He's been subbed twice by Jacare, which doesn't surprise me. But before he went on that losing streak, he was on a winning streak with 4 wins to mid-level UFC opponents like Nick Ring, Luis King, Nick Catone, and Dustin Jacoby. And he's won most of those by decision, one by TKO. So, you know, he is very game opponent against lesser, mid-level opponents in the UFC. My lean on this one would definitely be to go with Chris Camozzi, just from the experience standpoint. I think Tom Watson's kind of sloppy with his striking. I just don't like, he tends to kind of gas, and then he just kind of turns the fight into a brawl. It seems like the more he gasses, and I just don't like his style there. I think he's probably going to get taken down. So my leans to go with Chris Camozzi, probably by a unanimous decision. We'll go over at -240. Moving on to the next fight, we have our last fight of the prelims on Fox. It's going to be Uriah Hall and Oluwale Bangbosi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but very difficult name to pronounce. It seems like it's a Nigerian name. Uriah Hall's coming in as a almost 3-1 favorite at -332. Oluwale is coming in as a underdog at +290. Over/under set at 1.5 rounds. Over being favored at -140, and the under at +120. We've got two knockout artists here who like to finish. Uriah Hall lately has not been finishing opponents in the UFC. In fact, he's kind of been on the decline. One thing to take note about Uriah Hall is the mental game of Uriah Hall. If you watched his season of The Ultimate Fighter, he's just a fucking mental basket case. And I think that's also played a part in his recent losses. I think he's dealing with something mentally. I'm not sure what. Maybe some issues with family or significant other. I'm not too sure, and I haven't really had the chance to do any research on that. But definitely on the decline. The promotion and Dana White, I think they've kind of been pissed off at him because of all of the time and promoting that they put into this guy, and he just kind of turned out to be a dud. On the other hand, on the flip side, you've got an underdog here, a very game live underdog with Oluwale Bangbosi, and he's out of also New York, trains out of a gym. I forget the name of the gym, but it's kind of a mid-level, mid-tier gym. He seems like a well-rounded mixed martial artist. I watched some footage on the guy. He's finished guys rather quickly lately. One guy took a fight on short notice with him. He got knocked out in the first round. The guy seems really hyped up, has a lot of energy, just really excited to be where he's at. Uriah Hall, on the other hand, I just do not see that fire in his eyes like I do with this newcomer. I feel like Uriah Hall's probably going to get cut if he loses. His back is up against the wall here a little bit, so maybe he saw a psychologist or something and sorted out all the shit that he's kind of battled with over the last 2 years. I just feel like when he loses or doubts himself, Uriah Hall just turns to shit. This other guy seems extremely confident in himself. A little bit of a weirdo to some, I think, due to his religious background and his being a pretty zealous Christian. But I do think that this guy has a lot going for him. He seems like he's got some talent, and he seems like he's riding some momentum here. So the momentum being favored for the underdog here, I got to take a shot at the dog. I'm going to go with my lean to the underdog here for Oluwale, and I'm going to go with the under. I think we're going to see a finish here, whether it be Uriah Hall with the head kick KO or first round knockout of Hall. But I think it's going to be a quick finish here for this newcomer. I think people are going to be really surprised at what they see here. So I got to take a stab at the underdog at 3-1. I think he's in a good spot here for an upset. So yeah, those are my leans, under 1.5 rounds, and for the underdog. Next fight, I don't know a whole lot about these two guys. I didn't have a chance to look at any footage on either of them, so I'm going to be completely honest about that. Over/under set at 1.5 rounds for Ray Borg and Jean Herrera. Over being favored at -147, the under at +125. I'm just going to completely stay away from this one unless I get some time pre-fight to review footage and do a little research on these guys. Ray Borg is a negative 408, so he seems like he's a massive favorite here. A lot of money on him, it seems like. Gene Herrera is a almost 4-1 underdog at positive 350. So I don't have any leans here, unfortunately, and I'm sorry. Had some family commitments today, but I have handicapped the first couple fights pretty well. So, maybe I'll change my mind on this one if I get a chance to, look at some fights on these guys. But for now, I'm just going to stay away from these two. And I don't have any insight on either of them. Next fight, Sarah McMahon and Amanda Nunes. So it looks like our broadcast is picking up where it left off here. Apologize for that. My battery died and I had to plug in, so hopefully people can see this here. And it picks up where we left off. So where was that? Let's pull my browser up here. Okay, so we left off at Sarah McMahon and Amanda Nunes. McMahon coming in at favorite at negative 285. Nunes being underdog at positive 251. Over under set at 2.5 rounds. Over being a positive, or excuse me, a negative 134. Under being a positive 115. I think it's pretty simple here with this one. We don't need to really delve too deep. Nunes being a Brazilian and a pretty game opponent, but just not enough to defend against the top control of Sarah McMahon. Being an Olympian wrestler, I just feel like Sarah McMahon's going to dominate and push the pace on this fight, really control her with her heavy top game, and We may even see a finish here, probably by rear naked choke if we do. Maybe by knockout, but probably not by knockout. We haven't seen a whole lot of finishes with the women lately, other than Ronda Rousey. But Sarah McMahon is definitely, she wants another title shot with Rousey. We will probably see a pretty easy victory for her today. I recommend parlaying that with something. McMahon as the pick, and I'd probably go with the over 2.5 rounds here. I may not play that though. Moving on, we've got the hometown hero here, Jared Verscholt, negative 267, and Timothy Johnson, positive 236 as the underdog. Over-under set at 1.5 rounds. Over being favored at negative 196, under at positive 165. Both these guys are heavyweight fighters. We usually like to take the underdog with a lot of these heavyweight fighters that are practically undefeated, like Timothy Johnson. He's a 9-1 fighter. Haven't seen a lot of footage on him. I'm going to review some, but my lean's going to go with Timothy Johnson. Verscholt seems to be a pretty good wrestler. Hasn't really figured out how to transition his takedowns quite yet. He does have some striking ability, but definitely not by any means an elite striker. He may have improved in some areas since his last fight, but I got to go with a 2-1 dog here with Johnson, and the under on this one. Could see a KO here by one of these guys. Next fight, we've got Derek Brunson and Sam Alvey. Brunson's a massive favorite at negative 379, and Alvey being an underdog at positive 326. Over-under set at 2.5 rounds, over being favored at negative 123, under at positive 105. A lot of people are talking about an upset here by Alvey. Alvey's on a run right now. I think he's got on a 4-fight winning streak. Brunson's kind of been quiet lately. He was doing really well. He trains out of Jackson's MMA. I'm not sure if he's still with that camp or not, but I know that he does have a pretty good, he likes to really approach fights strategically. Alvey seems to have some good wrestling background, so he's going to have probably some pretty good takedown defense, some defensive wrestling. And if the fight does go to the ground, there is always a chance that he can reverse and also scramble for top control. And Brunson does have some striking as well, but definitely he likes to drag guys to the ground. Alvey's a pretty big guy. I think he's going to probably have a little bit of a striking advantage here to Brunson. Brunson has a questionable chin. He has been tagged. He was knocked out cold by Yoel Romero. His mouthpiece got knocked out. I'll never forget that. It was a pretty interesting fight because he was actually winning the majority of the time, and then he got knocked out third round. So he does have a questionable chin, but he does not leave himself open a whole lot. So, we're going to really have to, we're going to see what happens here. But I definitely think I would agree that Sam Alvey is definitely a live dog. I'm not sure who I'm going to play here, but for now I'm going to lean to Brunson. I wouldn't play him at those odds though. I think that they're way out of proportion. Alvey, I think, may be worth a shot as an underdog, but I'm not sure that I see him winning here completely. I do see Brunson landing a few takedowns, possibly controlling the majority of the fight here. But I want to review a little more footage on these guys, particularly Alvey, his last two fights. Gonna go with the under here on my lean. Next fight is Michael Johnson and Beneil Dariush. Michael Johnson coming in as a favorite, 1.5 favorite at negative 156. Dariush positive 140 as the underdog. Over under set at 2.5 rounds. Over being favored at negative 117 and under at negative 100. Both of these guys are very, very slick fighters. Both of them have been underdogs in several fights against really game talented opponents, and they have come out on top, and they've come out as the winner. So it's going to be very interesting, and I think this could possibly be a candidate for fight of the night, depending on how aggressive these guys come at each other. Dariush is definitely a very, very good wrestler, but so is Johnson as well. I think that striking, Dariush has definitely improved. He really has improved on his mixing striking with his wrestling. That's shown in his last couple fights. He's on a streak as far as winning. I see him going pretty far. I mean, he has only lost one fight. Johnson's lost quite a few fights, but over the last 2 years since being with the training in Florida, his boxing's just outstanding. I really like his striking. I also like his ability to land takedowns as well. So I think he's definitely game against a guy like Dariush, despite Dariush probably having some advantages in the wrestling department. It's really hard for me to pick a guy here. One thing to note, Dana White had tweeted recently some footage on Michael Johnson on his Twitter account. So I definitely know that the promotion is behind Michael Johnson, but Dariush, that could also be a diversion for a lot of the public too. It's hard to tell, but I definitely feel like the promotion is more behind Michael Johnson. I think Dana White particularly likes Michael Johnson. Not to say that we're conspirators, they're conspiring a win here, but definitely the odds reflect Michael Johnson as being the favorite here. Dariush is definitely a game underdog, but it just seems a little fishy to me with these lines. I'm not too sure about it. I'm going to lean with Michael Johnson to win by unanimous decision or split decision, and I'm going to lean with the over 2.5 rounds at -117. I would tread softly on these bets, though. This could go either way with these guys. It just really depends on who comes out, with a better mental game and a better strategy. So we'll see what happens here. It should be a really good fight. And the last fight, the main event of this card, Glover Teixeira versus Ovince St. Preux. This is pretty much a pick'em fight. Over/under set at 1.5 rounds. I'm not sure if it's going to be a 5-round fight or not. Usually the main event fights for these cards are 5 rounds. Over 1.5 rounds is set at -202, and under 1.5 rounds is +170. We've got 2 different swings of momentum here with these guys. Glover Teixeira has kind of taken a decline lately, losing his last 2 fights and dropping a decision loss to Phil Mr. Wonder Davis. Davis landed I think it was 6 or 7 takedowns on him, which just completely dominated him on the ground. Teixeira just did not look good that fight. He hasn't looked good either of his last 2 fights. Probably not going to get cut by UFC because he's such a talented fighter, but definitely not looking good, not looking like the normal Glover. Ever since his loss to John Jones, I definitely think that probably psychologically messed with him a little bit. When you've been on such a huge winning streak like Glover and then you lose, it can really just make or break a guy. As we've seen with the other fellow Brazilian, Renan Barão, he just does not look the same since he lost to TJ Dillashaw the first time. A lot of times guys get tagged and they get concussions. That can definitely affect a guy as well and change him as a fighter completely. Let's see here. Hang on just a second here. I got my stupid Windows 10 update trying to pop on my screen here. So my lean here, Ovince St. Preux, obviously looking really good lately with his striking. He did drop a loss to Ryan Bader a couple fights back, mainly to being able to be taken down rather easily with Bader. Bader has definitely really learned to use his elite wrestling, though, with MMA. He's really mixed it well, especially lately. Gotten guys to the ground that are hard to get to the ground. St. Preux did really well against he knocked out several guys. He's knocked out what's his name? I'm having a mental block right now. I'm sorry. Another Division I wrestler from Penn State. Excuse me. I can't even believe that I've forgotten the name here. I'm having a really bad mental block. I'm sorry. He knocked out Patrick Cummins. I'm sorry. I need to get some water. I'm kind of dehydrated. He knocked out Patrick Cummins in the first round. Fight did not last long at all. Patrick Cummins has a weak chin, but and quite opposite to Glover Teixeira. Glover definitely has a chin. Was it 5 rounds with John Jones, no problem, and both of those guys were busting each other's heads up really bad. Glover can take a punch. He can last. He has endurance. He's fought with wrestlers before. I don't know if he can stand the power of Ovince St. Preux. Ovince St. Preux is a very explosive fighter, very game opponent to anybody, very dangerous. A lot of people are saying for Ovince to win this one. A lot of good handicappers are on Ovince. I tend to agree with this. I think Glover's a changed fighter. I don't see him coming back here. I think the promotion's kind of done promoting him. I think OSP's the new electrifying, exciting guy who's going to make a rise out of nowhere and probably get a title shot eventually. So I could see either another knockout here or unanimous victory for St. Preux, especially if he's worked on his takedown defense. I think the only shot really that Glover has here is to get him to the ground and use his BJJ skills. But St. Preux, I think he just keeps improving. He just keeps looking better every fight. And I think that momentum is going to continue for him. I'm going to lean on Ovince St. Preux here to win by either split decision or decision. We definitely could see a knockout here, but I think Glover does have the chin to last through the fight. We could see a submission victory by Glover here, but I think Glover's going to gas. I think St. Preux's probably got a little bit better endurance than Glover, but if he does manage to get St. Preux to the ground, we could see kind of a repeat of what we saw with Bader. I don't think Glover has that top control that Bader has, so I'm going with St. Preux here on my lean, and I can't go with the under here. I got to go with the over, but I'm probably not going to touch that over at 202. You could think about parlaying that, though. 1.5 rounds, I think it's definitely going to go past 1.5 rounds. So best of luck to everybody. I hope that you've benefited from this broadcast. I apologize for the breach, with the broadcast there with my dying battery. Please bear with me, and best of luck to everybody. I hope everybody comes out on top and we cash at the window. So please stay tuned. Make sure at the bottom of the screen here that you subscribe to my channel. Please add me to Twitter. There's a link at the very bottom of the screen. Also, if you want to know where I pull my lines, I pull them from nitrogensports.eu. There are links at the bottom where you can sign up for an account. It does help, sponsor this channel and keep the fight picks coming. You can also parlay your MMA at Nitrogen Sports, which is really cool. And then there's also another link for my second favorite book, which is directsports.eu. Also a link at the bottom of this video, which you can use to make an account. And it definitely helps with our channel. So I appreciate that. Feel free to add me on Twitter. I do retweet and I trade retweets with other MMA news specialists and other MMA handicappers. I do any questions that you have, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. And I do appreciate the devil's advocates out there. Private message me, if you disagree with the pick. I do like the constructive criticism. I'm always trying to learn more about the game, and I appreciate all the insight that I can get. Should be an exciting night of fights, and best of luck to everybody. Thanks for viewing.